Hi everyone, this is Dr. Neha Khodke. Welcome to Zomeo Classroom, Session 2. Today we will be discussing a case of lumbar spondylosis and we will see how this case was resolved, how the patient got better with homeopathy in spite of the pathology. Basically, what I want to convey is that there is no person who will not benefit with homeopathy, and there is no case that will not or that cannot be resolved with Zomeo. Every case can be resolved, however serious, however complicated, however easy, or however difficult it is using Zomeo. Let's start with the case of lumbar spondylosis. This is the case of a 39-year-old female, a homemaker who quit her job as an advisor for an insurance company a few months ago. She has been married since 10 years. Now her chief complaints are that she has been complaining of a lower backache since the past 7 years. It is a throbbing kind of a pain. There is a history of having slipped and developed swelling in the lumbar region 9 years ago, and then she developed pain since 7 years. Currently, she is not on any treatment, although she has been taking allopathic medicines on and off. There is pain in the legs with the backache, and as an associated complaint, she also suffers from acidity or retrosternal burning. Now let us look at the modalities of her chief complaint. She feels better with hot fermentation by lying down, but she is aggravated on rising, standing for long periods of time. She is aggravated in the winter season or in the cold weather. Bending forward also aggravates her, and she suffers from morning stiffness that lasts for around 30 minutes. Now, provisionally, we can diagnose this three ways. When we need to diagnose a case, there are three things that we rely on when we diagnose. The first is the history that is given by the patient or elicited by the doctor. Second is the clinical examination that is done by the doctor. And lastly, the confirmatory diagnosis, which is given by the investigations that are suggested. Now, from the symptoms that we have already seen, we can think of three diagnoses that come to our mind. The first is a PID or a prolapsed intervertebral disc, where the disc between two vertebrae protrudes out, and this reduces the joint space, which results in nerve compression and pain. Generally, a PID at the level of the lumbar and sacral vertebrae will give rise to sciatica as well as the backache. The second is a spondylolisthesis, in which one vertebra displaces over the other, again leading to nerve compression and pain. And the third pathology is a degenerative pathology that we see in lumbosacral spondylosis. We were still unsure as to what her final diagnosis was. Before we move on to clinical examination, let us see the other characteristics that this patient had. She complained of thick, white and delible, white staining, non-offensive leukorrhea. She had a vertigo of high places with no known cause, completely thirstless patient, an intense desire for sweets and spicy foods. She always slept on her left side. Her dreams were occasional but of daily routine, and she had offensive perspiration, mildly offensive. Looking at her mind and life situation, there is an intense fear of insects, darkness, death. All fears exist without any reason since childhood. There is a brooding tendency. She is unable to forget things that hurt her for months or sometimes even years. She is an extremely reserved person with a bit of a reserved displeasure. Will walk out if she is hurt by someone, but will never express what she feels. She prefers being alone. She is extremely fastidious, gets irritated if there is a mess around her. She has a tendency towards weeping, but she is quite aggravated by any kind of consolation. She will cry more when consolation is offered. She is very stressed. She lives in a joint family and so has a lot of workload. She wishes to separate, but she is unable to express her feelings. We now come to the clinical examination. In such a case, the spine is examined with the patient lying down as well as when the patient is standing. On standing, a loss of lumbar lordosis was noted. A Lasix test was performed. A Lasix test is also called a straight leg raising test. This is done when the patient is lying down, knee is extended and the hip is slowly flexed at different angles. Ideally, the patient uh, is able to move the hip joint painlessly. However, if there is a pain that is experienced, especially between 30 and 70 degrees, then we say that Lasix test or SLR test is positive. And this indicates some sort of a pathology at the lumbosacral level. Now, pain was aggravated on performing SLR, which is an indication that the lower lumbosacral nerve roots were inflamed. Investigations were suggested and done. An X-ray of the LS spine showed bulging of upper and lower end plates at L3, L4, and an MRI of the lumbar spine showed a mild posterior bulge at L4, L5, L5, S1 discs. This confirmed lumbosacral spondylosis. Apart from that, her blood tests showed a mild anemia, a mildly increased ESR, a total WBC count of 4,600 which was normal, platelets 2 lakh again normal, calcium normal. However, her vitamin D3 was extremely low at 7.9. Now here for the approach of totality, we decided to adopt the Kentian approach because the case has more characteristics at the level of mind and generals. However, let me tell you that the pathology cannot be ignored. Here is the totality that we took. Now, in the last session, I explained to you what is exactly totality. So, a totality of symptoms is an aggregation, however, a logical aggregation or a logical harmony of the most characteristic symptoms of the patient that we consider the outward reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease, that is, of the affection of the vital force. This is to quote aphorism 7 of the Organon of Medicine, 6th edition, written by Samuel Hahnemann. And that is why we have taken the most characteristic symptoms of the patient in the totality. The first three that we take are her fears. Why have we taken her fear of insects, fear of death, fear of darkness? Because for her age, these fears are a bit peculiar. And the fear of death was extremely intense, which is why we have taken these three symptoms first. The next that we took was brooding. We took brooding because this particular symptom has been extremely pervasive throughout the personality of the patient through so many years of her life. So for the intensity as well as the pervasiveness, we have taken on brooding. Then we also, according to the intensity, took on aversion to company, a characteristic attribute which is reserved displeasure. We took on fastidious, again a characteristic symptom for this patient because she would get irritated because of uncleanliness. We have then taken on her general desires or cravings in food, which is the craving for sweets and the craving for spicy food. Then as the next physical general which was characteristic was that she always slept on the left side. So we have taken that as a symptom in the totality. The next we have taken is the complete thirstlessness that this patient has displayed. And the last is a characteristic physical particular which is vertigo of high places. Now, generally in people who have a history of, say, falling from a height and then developing a fear, we would never take this. But this patient never had any such history. She just had a fear, a dizziness when she went to any high place, which is why we have considered this symptom as part of her totality, because it is a peculiar manifestation of her internal ailment. Moving on to how we converted each of them into a rubric. The first three are fears. So if they are fears, they are naturally found in the mind chapter of any repertory. What we have done is we have taken this or we have extracted these rubrics from the complete repertory. So fear of insects has become fear bugs insects. Fear of death is translated quite literally as fear death of. Fear of darkness becomes fear dark of. Brooding is directly converted into the rubric brooding. Company aversion to, again, a symptom of the mind, so aversion to company. Reserved, then we took on reserved displeasure. Then we took on fastidious, that is the extreme tendency to be clean or particular. Craving for sweets we took on from the generalities chapter. So food and drinks, sweets, desires. Craving for spicy, food and drinks, spices, condiments, piquant, highly seasoned food desires. Sleeping on the left side was taken as sleep. So we went to the sleep chapter now. Sleep, position, side on left. Thirstlessness, although present as a rubric, we decided to use this as an eliminating symptom using a filter. And the final rubric, which is vertigo aggravated by high places, we have taken it from the chapter vertigo, high places. So these are the rubrics that we have taken. I will repeat them again. Fear bugs insects. You can take a note of these. Fear bugs insects. Fear death of, fear dark of, brooding, company aversion to, reserved, reserved displeasure, fastidious, food and drinks, sweet desires, food and drinks, spices, condiments, piquant, highly seasoned food desires, sleep position, side on left, thirstlessness, which we will consider in the repertorization filter, and vertigo, high places. Now, since we have already decided on the rubrics, let us now see how we can go about recording this in hompathsomeo. The first thing that we can do is, see, there are two ways in which we can go about this. Either you can directly start recording the rubrics, or you can create this patient in the software and then start recording rubrics. In the first session that you remember of learning disorders, I had directly started recording the rubrics. Here, let's do it the other way around. Let us create the patient first and then record the rubric. So when I need to create a patient, I click on patient, new case. It will ask me as a prompt, start a new case by create patient, select patient, or speed case. Select patient is for those patients that are already have been, whose data has already been recorded, but I will go for create patient. So now I just have to enter mandatorily the first name. I will just enter CN, save. So now I have recorded the data of this patient. This patient has been selected, and now I can start repertorizing this case using Zomeo. The first symptom that I will take is fear of insects. Now, instead of going the classic way first, I'll show you the quick symptom record. If you remember in our first session, the quick symptom record is here in the repertory section. Basically, this is the section that is very helpful to homeopaths who had just started or newly started their practice, for whom converting symptoms into rubrics is a slightly difficult task. And it is also very useful for seasoned practitioners who would like to record the rubrics very, very fast. So the first rubric that we have is fear of insects. Now in this, what I can do is just type in fear. And when I type in fear, under the mind chapter, there are different categories of fear. So morning, afternoon, evening, night. What I want is this, insects. So I select insects, and here I have the rubrics that are linked to this word insects. So there are different types of insects. There are spiders, bugs, insects, cockroaches, flies. But what I want are in general insects. So I will choose this rubric, fear bugs insects, in which there are 20 remedies. And I will select this. This rubric is now recorded. The next rubric that I want to record is fear of death. Again, I can just look in this list, just scroll down this list, or I can type here death, and I will get the relevant symptom of fear of death. Again, here on the right hand side, I can see all the linked rubrics from different repertories: Complete, Kent, Boric, Lippy, Allen, Nair. I will select the first one, which has the maximum number of remedies. And that reference is from the Complete repertory, Fear Death Of. Alright, so I have recorded already two rubrics from our list, which is Fear Bugs Insects and Fear of Death. Now for the third fear, which is the fear of darkness, let me show you from another way. We'll go back to the classic way of level search. In this, I am going to show you how we can look for fear of darkness. Now here, this is the classic way that I'm showing you, which is the level search. So from the complete mind chapter, I select from search, I select level search. And here I type fear. At the third level, I type dark. Why? Because dark is a sub-rubric of the main rubric, which is fear. And that is why dark is found at the third level. So now I see I have directly jumped to fear of dark that has 125 remedies, and I will select that rubric to be recorded. Okay. The next rubric that I want to record is brooding. Again, I can do this through level search or from this chapter itself. Let me just type brooding, and it will internally search. Here in the count, it has given me 24 references for brooding, which means that brooding as the main rubric with a lot of sub-rubrics under it. I want to take the general rubric of brooding. So I now select brooding. The next symptom is company aversion to. Again, let me show this to you using internal search. I am just typing in company. These are all rubrics from the mind chapter. So that is why I am within the mind chapter of the complete repertory for now. All right. So company. Okay. The moment I have typed company, I can see the first rubric as company aversion to. I can directly record the rubric from here, or I can jump to the rubric by just clicking on it. I jump to the rubric here, company aversion to. I select it. All right. And my last rubric that I would like to show you using the classic view is reserved. Again, you can either start directly typing in reserved, and here you are. We have jumped to reserved here. I will check this box and I have recorded reserved. Up till now, if you can see here on the left hand side, we have recorded 6 rubrics. Okay, we recorded fear of insects, fear of death, fear of dark, brooding, company aversion to, and reserved. Now the next rubric that we have to record we still have two more mental rubrics to record, which are reserved displeasure and fastidious. Okay, let's use the rep search this time. So here we are now going to do a repertory search where we will generally search for the keywords and we will see what is the result that we get. I will now record reserved displeasure using repertory search. What I need to do is press Command S. I repeat, Command S. And now a window opens in which I need to just type the symptom or the keywords. So I will be now typing reserved displeasure. All right. For reserved displeasure, I now have 16 references. So two references here. I can see the different references from the different repertories for reserved displeasure. If I want to see all of them again, I will click on all. Let me record the rubric reserved displeasure from the complete repertory by checking this box. The next rubric that I want to record is fastidious. Again, pressing Command S from the keyboard, I get this pop-up window where I type fastidious. I select the word fastidious and search, or I just press enter from my keyboard and I get 12 references for fastidious. Selecting fastidious. Now, the next two rubrics that I have are the desires for food. So we have desire for sweets and we have desire for spicy. All right. So we will be recording those rubrics also using the Command S feature. So pressing Command S from the keyboard, I now type in desire sweets. And I get the references for desire sweets. Now, why it is more convenient to record using especially these type of rubrics using Command S is that in a lot of repertories, desire for any kind of foods are given in different chapters. Like in complete, it's given in generalities. In Kent, it's given in the stomach chapter. In Gentry, again, it's given in the stomach chapter, and so on. So sometimes, we get confused in which chapter are food desires present. So this becomes a very important way, or sorry, it's a very useful way, I would say, in which you can record the rubrics of desire. So we now have 104 references. I will record the first one, which is from the generalities chapter of the complete repertory, food and drinks, sweet desires. The next rubric that I want to record is food and drinks, spices, desires. Command S again, desire, spices. Okay, we have three references here. We will take the first one, which has 123 remedies, food and drinks, spices, condiments, piquant, highly seasoned food desires. Let's record this rubric. Okay, so we have recorded quite a bit of rubrics using the quick symptom record, the classic level search feature, the classic internal feature, and the repertory search. We will now go on to the repertorization sheet. So this is a repertorization sheet that has got 730 remedies. I do remember that we have two more rubrics to record. So I will show you now the easiest way in which you can record rubrics, which is also the quickest way, and that is why the name quick repertorization. So here I just have to type in the keywords and the software intelligently directly records the rubric which is most relevant to the keywords that I have typed. Now this effectively eliminates the middle step in which I have to search for the rubric and then record it. And that is why this is an extremely fast and rapid way in which I can record rubrics in the repertorization sheet. We still have two more rubrics to record. One is sleeping on the left side. So I type in sleep, position, left. All right, when I type that, the rubric that you see is directly recorded from the complete repertory sleep chapter, position side on left, which has 39 remedies. And the final rubric that I want to record is the characteristic particular, which is vertigo high places. So again, in the quick rep search bar, I type vertigo high places. And now the rubric has been recorded from the vertigo chapter of the complete repertory, which is vertigo high places. All right. So now this is my final repertorization sheet. You can see that it has got 734 remedies. Now I have to drill down and refine to just a few remedies to then finally know which is the remedy for this patient of lumbar spondylosis. Okay, now let us do something. Let's start applying filters. Okay, just like the last case, where if you remember from 770 odd remedies, we drilled down to just one. Okay, let us see if we can achieve a similar kind of result here, where we can drill down to say 2 or 3 or 4 remedies. All right, so here I have the filters of Zomeo. And if you remember, we had taken thirstlessness in the totality. So let us apply the filter of thirstlessness here. Okay. So I go to remedy property. Thirst as a filter is available in the remedy property filter. So here in the thirst, I select thirstlessness. So it largely depends on the physician. If you want, you can select just one parameter from here. If you want, you can select some other parameters as well. Okay. As of now, I will be selecting only thirstless. I will apply this filter. And now from 730 odd, we have drilled down to 149 remedies. Now, I want to tell you why this filter is so important. Because the symptom of thirstlessness was so marked in the patient, you cannot ignore this kind of a symptom, which is why you want only those remedies that feature this particular symptom in them, that feature this particular symptom in their provers. And that is why we have applied this filter of thirstlessness. And it's very important because from 700 remedies, we have now drilled down to just 149. However, we still have other filters available to us for our help, and that is why we will be applying a second filter here to know whether we can drill this down further. Okay, so let us apply the cross repertorization filter here. Now in this, what I found extremely marked in this patient of lumbar spondylosis was her pervasive brooding, was her reserved displeasure, and her vertigo of high places, which I found peculiar. So I have taken these three rubrics to be the most important. Why cross repertorization is an extremely useful tool is that whatever rubrics that I select, I will be finally able to see only those remedies that are featured in all three rubrics, or only the three rubrics that I have selected, which means that my list is going to drill down considerably, and this is going to really help me to achieve the final prescription for the patient. So I have selected the most important rubrics that I felt for this patient, which is brooding, reserved displeasure, and vertigo of high places. I apply this, and now see, we have now just three remedies in front of us. We have natromure, we have staphysagria, and we have aurum metallicum. Now all we need to do is we need to compare the three to know which is the remedy that is most suited. Although I can see in this list that Natramur is covering the maximum symptoms, and even in the totality it is coming first. But as a conscientious physician, I want to be sure that Natramur is the remedy for my patient. Okay, so now within this screen itself, I can compare these 2 or 3 remedies that I have, and I can see which is the remedy that is the final ideal prescription for my patient. So what I'll do is I'll do a right click on Natramur and I will click on add to compare. I want to compare 2 remedies side by side. It will help me to get an idea as to which is the best remedy for my patient. I will right click on staff and click on add to compare, and then I will just click on compare. When I click on compare, now in this window, I can see both the remedies side by side, and I can compare them with regards to their characteristics and symptoms. Now, in this particular case, I want to compare them at their keynote level. Okay, so on the keynote level, if I am comparing them, what I am seeing are the keynotes of Staphysagria and the keynotes of Natrum article seen side by side. So it is easy for me to read the symptoms of staph and then read the symptoms of Natmur and then see finally which remedy I want to give to this patient. So because she had a lot of complaints at the level of the mind, let's see what is written in the mind. Okay, so in Natramur here, what we can see is consolation aggravates, something that is there in our patient. Easily angered, aggravated consolation, hateful to people who have offended him. Okay, what else can we see? An idea clings, preventing sleep. All right, so this can point out to a brooding tendency as well. Let's move on to the confirmatory symptoms. All right, so even in the confirmatory symptoms, what I can see is that my patient is veering more towards Natramur. Even in the clinical, it is giving me anemia and my patient is mildly anemic. So let us finally decide that we will be giving Natramur to this patient, or do we want to confirm this further? Let us confirm this further. Let us go through a reference book. The last time, if you remember, we had gone through Fatak. So this time, let's go through a different one. I right-clicked on Natramur and I went to reference books. Let me take on one of the most sought after, one of the most referenced reference books, which is Lectures on Homeopathy by J.T. Kent. All right. So when I look at this, when I am going through this particular remedy, okay. Now in this again, I can see consolation, aggravated, unpleasant occurrences are recalled that she may grieve over them. So this is just a longer way of explaining brooding. Okay. So yes. So now I am seeing that through the keynotes as well as through this reference book of Kent, I can see that Natramur is the remedy for my patient. So I will be now finally prescribing Natramur to this patient of lumbar spondylosis. What I need to do is a right click and I will click on prescribe. Okay. Now I type in for what I am prescribing Natramur to this patient. The dosage is 4 pills and I want to give this thrice a day. Now in the 200 potency. The question is why thrice a day? Okay. thrice a day because this patient has quite a deep pathology, which is why I am prescribing this remedy thrice a day. So now this remedy has been prescribed for the patient, and I can see this prescription here in the follow-up section. Okay, that natrum mur has been prescribed. All right. So now let me show you. Before that, I'm very happy with this because I am not just repertorizing, I'm able to record everything about the patient here. So right from case taking to the recording of rubrics to the prescription, I get to see everything here. I get to record everything here, store everything in Zomeo. So this becomes simpler for me. It is a paperless process. I don't have a lot of files in the clinic. So everything is there here in this laptop. All right. So now let me see. Let's go through the prescription that was finally given. Like I said, natrum mur was prescribed on the basis of the totality. We saw that natrum mur came up in the list. Natrum mur was given in the 200th potency thrice a day. However, let us remember that it is not just the medicine that we need to give as doctors. We need to also advise the patient on the do's and don'ts, on the other things that he needs to follow and do if he wants to get better. So it is not just the medicine, but even the ancillary and auxiliary advice that we give to the patient, which helps them to recover faster. All right. So the auxiliary treatment that we recommended were calcium supplements as well as a dose of vitamin D, 60K units or 60,000 units once in a week. She was also recommended shortwave diathermy or SWD for the affected joints, as well as exercise training for strengthening of muscles. This is very, very important because we see that spondylosis has a degenerative pathology. So if the bones are in a degenerative state already, we need the muscles that are surrounding them, the joints, the ligaments that are holding them together to be strong. And for that, we need to do strengthening exercises, but under guidance, of course. In the ancillary treatment, she was advised to do hot fermentation thrice a day, keep a towel roll under the lower back while lying down, avoid wearing flat shoes or high-heeled shoes, suggest lying on the tummy and walk straight in a correct posture. With regards to do's and don'ts, do's, ensure that your lower back is supported well with a pillow. Sit with your back straight. Slouching is not allowed because slouching is going to strain the muscles and the joints, and this will aggravate the pain. Ensure that your work desk is at a correct and comfortable height. Sit only for short intervals. So you need to get up and walk. So whether it is a work desk, because she just gave up her job, she's at home. So again, not sitting in one place, getting up and moving around, using the muscles is also essential towards the process of recovery. If you are driving for long periods of time, take pit stops as often as possible. Ensure that the mattress you sleep on is firm enough to support the curvature of your spine. What are the don'ts? Something that you just absolutely should not do is do not sit on soft couches, because on soft couches you tend to slouch because they don't give a good support to your back. Do not slouch. This will exert your lower back. Avoid lifting heavy objects. Bending to lift anything is a strict no-no. But when we say bending, it is bending at the hips. So do not bend down. If you need to bend to lift something, you need to bend at the knee. Do not wear high-heeled, uncomfortable shoes. Okay, so natrum mur was prescribed to this patient along with the auxiliary and ancillary measures, and these were the follow-ups we saw. So when the patient came for the follow-up, she said her backache has been aggravated by 15%, whereas all other parameters are SQ. So there is no change except for the leukorrhea, which was much, much better. So because there was an aggravation which did not then go into amelioration, and because all the other symptoms of leg pain, acidity, morning stiffness, and her bad sleep, we upped the potency of natriumur and we gave her 1 m. And 1 m was given again thrice a day. The next follow-up she came, she said that she was marginally better in her backache, marginally better in the stiffness, but again all other parameters were status quo. At that point, we decided to interject an intercurrent remedy in the form of Thuja. So Thuja 1 m was given at bedtime, 1 powder, and natriumur was continued in the 1 m potency. She came for her next follow-up feeling better by 20% in her backache. Her leg pain was better. Her morning stiffness and generals were marginally better. So now we gave her Thuja 1 m, 2 powders weekly at bedtime, and natriumur TDS. The next follow-up that she came in, there was no change in her complaints. So basically what we are seeing is that although the patient is better, she's not doing really well or she's not really happy. So just for the sake of managing the acute pain that we have, that she had, we gave her Bryonia because Bryonia has a specific sphere of action on the joints. However, we knew that we were not heading in the right direction with natriumur. So what we decided is that we will review the case again. So remember that just because you have selected one remedy which you feel is the constitutional remedy, if it is not working for the patient, if the patient is not feeling better generally, if the patient is not feeling better in her chief complaints, you need to review the case to see whether you need to give another remedy to the patient. Whether the remedy that you have given to the patient initially was just a partial similimum and not a complete similimum. So we did a review of the case. So we saw that although the pain was better, the patient did not show much improvement overall. So the case was reviewed. Now what happened during that time was that her husband came in for a case taking as well for himself, for his other complaints. So when the husband's case was taken, there were a lot of things about the patient that came to light. It was observed that the patient had too many suppressed emotions, which were never expressed even to her husband. And there were a lot of indignation experiences with him. This seems to point us, now do you remember in the repertorization sheet when we saw, when we applied all the filters that we had, so the filter of thirstlessness that we applied, plus the filter of cross repertorization that we applied, we finally came to 3 remedies. And the second remedy in the list was Staphysagria. And that is why we thought of this remedy, because this remedy has a lot of reserved displeasure, if you remember Staphysagria. Okay, so let's see. We can also read Staphysagria and see what is there. Let's read Staphysagria also from Ken's lecture. So again, what I did was I did a right click. I clicked on reference books and then I went on lectures of homeopathy. And here while reading, we realized that this patient has a lot of indignation. So here you see suppressed indignation, suited in cases where complaints come from pent-up wrath, suppressed anger, suppressed feelings. So great indignations about things done by others or by himself, grieves about consequences. So there is indignation, there is suppressed emotion, and there is brooding in Staphysagria, which made us realize that the remedy or the right remedy for this patient was not natriumur, it was Staphysagria. So for this patient, we gave Staphysagria. Staph was given again 200 TDS. When she came for her next follow-up after 10 days, her backache was better by 30%. So in a span of just 10 days, her backache had improved a lot. Pain in the leg had improved. Acidity had improved but then got aggravated again. The leukorrhea, however, came back. Sleep had improved. So we know that the generals have started improving, the chief complaint has started improving. So we know that we are on the right track with regards to remedy. He continued with staphysagria. In the next subsequent follow-ups, you can see that at all levels, she is much better. So her backache is much better, her leg pain is better. Uh, by the time she came, her acidity was much better, her leukorrhea was better than aggravated. So we were a little concerned about why the leukorrhea was still a concern, although her chief complaint was better. On observation, we saw that the patient had started improving a lot after staph was prescribed. Currently, her back pain is 90% better, acidity is better, no leukorrhea, but leukorrhea is on and off. On observation and on examination, because of her consistent leukorrhea, we told her to do a sonography. We saw that there were fibroids in the uterus. So again, we gave her thuja along with staphysagria because this is a very strong psychotic miasmatic tendency that the patient showed. So now again, thuja was given with staph, and now you can see that most of her parameters are fine. They are gone except for the backache which is there but which is under control, much better. Patient is very happy with thuja as well as staphysagria. The potency of thuja was increased to 1 m single dose, and staphysagria was continued in the 200th potency as TDS. Now, what is the learning that we see? The learning from this case is that when a particular remedy works for a certain level, a wiser physician is open to suggestion of changing the remedy. Like we saw that natrum mur worked, but only partially. So we had to reconsider the case and review the case to see whether another remedy fitted this patient's picture or not. The role of the intercurrent medicine, in this case thuja, was very important because thuja helped to open newer avenues in the patient of getting relief. Such an advanced pathology can be relieved so well with simple homeopathic medicines, giving the patient quality life and mobility to enjoy the finer shades of happiness. Such common medicines can bring about desired results. We don't have to run to rare and unusual remedies to obtain relief. The physician has to be open to the response given by the patient and must be willing to change the prescription as and when required. So we need to be extremely unprejudiced when it comes to remedy prescription. Here, the most important thing is higher potency, frequent repetition, because the pathology was quite advanced. If you don't give this, the relief will only be partial or it will take a much longer time to obtain relief, and by that time the patient may not be there with you, he may have shifted to another doctor. Our main concern is that we are able to achieve the right type of results in the shortest possible time. And this is what was done in this case that we see. And here we end with the case discussion for lumbar spondylosis. This is the second session of homeopathy cases with Zomeo. I hope that you have enjoyed this session and you have learned a lot from this session. And I will see you next week with our next case. Thank you.